Hey, and welcome back to Herb Leathercraft. So today, what I'm going to cover is the basics of leather. If you're anything like I am, fairly new to leathercraft, I initially thought that leather was the skin of an animal. However, that's not quite correct. So what leather is the skin of an animal, generally a cow, and it's treated in a tanning process, hence the tanneries. And it's done in a couple of ways. I'll cover both of those, but it's basically going to remove all the fats, the hairs, and all the materials that are going to actually decompose that skin over time. And this produces a hide. So what we're working with generally is leather hides rather than leather skin. If you're working with leather skin, it'll decompose and you're going to have a lot of organic materials that you have to work with. Hide's still organic. It does age, but it's not the same as if you just took a skin off an animal with all the fat and hair and all that stuff on. So the tanning process removes all those hairs, all the fats, and it creates a nice hide that we can work with. So I'm going to cover the tanning processes and which processes are most commonly used. The first that you'll see most often in most material or in most leather products is chrome tan. This uses a chromium salt. Either it's a bath of sorts using a pretty acidic chrome bath. It's either done in barrels or in tanning pits, and what that does is it removes all the fats and hairs. But using the chromium salts, it actually produces our hides in a much quicker fashion. It also leaves the hide much more supple and malleable, so you can bend it and move it. But there's limitations to the chrome line. Because it's done in that fashion, you can't hand tool it, so you can't do carving, you can't punch in things very easily, and it's really flexible for certain projects, so it won't help you finish everything you want, especially if you want something that's going to look really sharp with your own custom touch with the carving and the detailing. And chrome tan leather, good for waterproof clothing style material, upholsteries. So if you're refinishing furniture for somebody, for a contract or whatever, so hats, shoes, things like that, clothing material, because the chrome tanning also, normally they do like a fat liqueuring, and that provides more waterproofing as well, where chrome tan is ideal for that. I'll show you some examples in a while. So next, we're going to move into vegetable tanned leather. So for vegetable tanned leather, they'll use a tanning process. It's similar, except it's going to be using like twigs and bark of trees. And if you want more information on that, there's specific styles of trees that work well. Oak, hemlock. Anyway, there's a lot of information on the tanning process online if you're more interested. I'm not going to get into that too much. I just know the leathers that I like to use. So I generally go with the vegetable tanned leathers. So they use bark, twigs, sometimes leaves, water, and the tanner has to ensure that that's set up correctly, so that as it goes through the tanning process, which takes much longer than chrome tanning. So chrome tanning can take as little as 3 hours to have a hide that's workable. Vegetable tanning, you're looking at up to like 90 days. So that's where your cost comes in. We'll talk a bit about that too. in a bit. So your vegetable tans, that's all your leather that you're going to be doing hand tooling, or you're able to dye it. You're able to dye it your own colors, whereas the chrome tanned leather doesn't take dyes. It will a bit, but because of the way the pores are all sealed with the chrome tanning process, you lose the ability to hand carve, hand tool. So punching in nice decorative work is extremely difficult to do on a chrome tanned. The veg tan is good for if you're custom making belts, like we saw where I cut stitch lines and did the punch work on the edging. It's very difficult to do that on a chrome tan leather. Chrome tan leather is generally quite a bit cheaper, as the process is much faster. However, it does limit what you're going to be able to do on your projects. You're not going to be able to do the tooling and the nice looking finishes. But then we move into our vegetable tan leather. It comes in many sizes. So does your chrome tan, but the vegetable tan is much stiffer, much more rigid, and it costs a lot more. Again, this is because it takes a long time to produce and what you're able to do with it afterwards. So with that vegetable tan leather, you can do all your carving, you can do all your punch work. I'm gonna try to zoom that in a bit. So this is a nice thick vegetable tanned leather. Yeah. So I'll show you an example of the vegetable tanned leather. Next, I'm going to move into explaining leather thickness and a few more properties. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about leather thicknesses. Kind of strange the way they measure leather. So it's in ounces generally. So if you're going to order it from, say, Tandy Leather or any other leather tannery, generally you're going to see it in ounces. When shoemakers work with it, from what I'm seeing, is it's measured in irons. I'm not going to cover that. Even if I get into making leather shoes, I'm probably not going to measure it in in irons. I'll continue measuring it in ounces. I'm going to show you a few examples as well of how to measure it. Right now, all I have is a vernier caliper, but it'll show you the basics. So generally, a 1 ounce leather is going to be 0.4 millimeters thick, or in the United States, it's 1/64 of an inch. For a 2 ounce leather, you're looking at 0.8 millimeters. So as you see, it goes up in 0.4 millimeters for every ounce. I'll do a few measurements here as I'm explaining the leather, and we'll add that in. Now what I'm going to cover is a few different of the styles of leather, as well as how to measure thickness. This is a thick vegetable tanned leather, and as you can see, it's quite thick and it's very stiff. So it bends back, holds shape, which can be very handy, especially if you're going to be doing any wet molding or anything like that. Now, in contrast, this is a chrome tanned leather, quite a bit thinner. So flesh side in leather is actually the inner portion of the hide or skin. So this is where all the fat would be connected, and hence why you get all the little fibers. So I like to use this nice chrome tanned, stretchy, flexible leather for lining. However, I will say with chrome tanned leather, be careful if you're putting metal objects inside of what you're lining, as the chrome will actually discolor and can cause damage to your metal blades or whatever you're putting that's metal inside. But I do like this side of the surface. But this side as well is finished. And that can be used for like bags as long as you're willing to account for the stretch. But I like this as it looks like a new buck. So that, yeah, chrome tanned hide, very flexible, not very stiff, won't hold the shape very easily. Good for clothing so that you have that flexibility in shoulders or whatever. Not good for bags or pouches that has to maintain a shape. This is a chrome tanned leather that has been hung and has a nice finish. This is more so upholstery. This is like an upholstery leather, fairly thick, so it'll hold up to scratches and whatever. I just don't tend to use it a lot because I like the flexibility of being able to add my own touch to it. So I really like the vegetable tanned leathers. So this is a nice thin vegetable tanned leather, and you'll see it's quite even being this thin, it'll hold shape. It doesn't flop around like the chrome tanned. So chrome tanned, similar thickness, and the vegetable tanned, and you'll see this does not hold its shape. It just flops down, whereas the vegetable tanned is definitely not as flexible. However, even this thin, I can tool work into this and have it look really nice. So I use this for like small pouches or purse material where I actually want to do some work on it, some carving or whatever. You just have to be careful, especially when it's that thin, that you don't go right through. Now, vegetable tanned leather can come in a colored finish, so a pre-dyed finish. So this is a fairly thin, we'll get into the measurement in a bit, but a fairly thin veg tanned leather that's dyed a nice dark brown. So this I'll use for hats or clothing or something like that, because again, it's not as flexible as that chrome tan, holds its shape, and I can still tool on this. So even though it's already pre-dyed, I can still tool work into this. Now, there's different cuts and stuff. Generally, I like to try to get half hides because they provide the most material for me, and generally I use a lot of the thicker half hides. So this was a half hide at one point, and I've pretty much burnt through all of it just with the projects that I've done since I started. So this is a half hide has lasted me roughly 1.5 years, and now I've had to reorder. Now, I was going to be doing a different project today, but my order hasn't come in because of COVID-19, which is okay. It gives me the opportunity to break down some of the basics in my channel so that you guys have a one-stop shop here at Herb Leathercraft. Getting into measuring. So they sell measuring tools, but generally if you just use a vernier caliper, digital or not, all you do is measure across the thickness. Make sure you measure in a few spots, so that's 3.5 millimeters, 3.75 millimeters there. So I'm looking anywhere between an 8 and a 9 ounce leather. Now there's going to be variation in the hide as you go along. So that's why when you order a leather, you're never just going to get a 10 ounce leather unless you get a smaller square. And that's just because leather varies, skin varies, right? So that's what you're going to get. All right, so that is a basically 8 or 9 ounce leather. in the veg tan. Now I'm going to move into this thinner hide. So we're looking at 1.4, 1.6. So at 1.6 we are looking at 4. So between a 3 and a 4 ounce leather here. So a 1 ounce leather is going to be extremely thin. But that's a 4 ounce veg tan. Then I've got my brown veg tan. It is 1.9. Another measurement up here. 2 mil. So that's about a 5 ounce leather. Veg tan, pre-dyed with some scars. And the same can be done for your chrome tan leather. So 1.5, 1.8. So I'm looking between a 4 and a 5 ounce for this this upholstery leather. So I hope that explains some of it. Now what I'll get on to is some of the cuts.
So we have whole hide, side, double shoulder, single shoulder, bend, a double bend, belly, or splits.
Well, I hope today's episode helped you at least get the basics of what leather is. If you found use in this, I'd really appreciate if you liked, subscribed, hit that notification bell so that you're notified whenever I have new content. And as well, feel free to pass this channel on to someone you know that may like leather work. I'd really like to inspire new people to take up the craft, and I hope you had a great day, and I'll see you next time.